I'll call the meeting to order. It is Municipal Council meeting of the District of Lunenburg on Tuesday, June the 9th at 6 p.m. We'll acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are privileged to share the land with them. Are there any announcements, acknowledgements, or recognitions? I will acknowledge receiving regrets from Councillor Brooks. Are there other Councillor and Councillor Burns is joining us by Teams, and Councillor Reinhardt.
Thank you. I'm very proud today to recognize a local resident, Kate Wright, who's been awarded the prestigious Frida Vickery Award by the Nova Scotia College of Social Workers. This provincial award is presented once every 2 years to a registered social worker who displays imagination and creativity in their work and who gives their professional skills to the community at large. I was so pleased to hear that this award was presented to Kate, who is a member of my community and is constantly volunteering her skills to many organizations in Lunenburg County and beyond. From the fire service to the farmers market to the youth drop-in. At home in my district, Kate has been instrumental in working with a core group of volunteers to start and grow a local organization, Petite Queer Pride, which does so much to bring people together, build community, and animate rural life all through the year with their vibrant events and inclusive programming. As a counselor, I see the impact that Kate makes in our community, and I'm constantly impressed by her skill and generosity with her time. I'm so pleased that the Nova Scotia Council of Social Work has recognized her talent and that she makes Lunenburg County her home.
Our congratulations to her. Yeah. Other announcements from anyone? Nope. Right. We will move on to, we do allow 15-minute period for public input, and we have no one in the gallery tonight. We're also tonight allowing time after our discussion or presentation on municipal planning strategy for more public input. Perhaps some people will come in time for that. But at this point, we do not have anyone in the gallery, so we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Councillor Oikel.
Yes, I would like to have item, let me find it here, under Mayors, Deputy Mayors, and Councils Matters, 12.1 MJSB update removed as there was no meeting last month, so there is no update.
With that adjustment, would someone move the agenda be approved? Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. We have minutes circulated from May the 26th. Are there any errors or omissions and corrections required in the minutes? Seeing none, I will approve those as circulated. We have no business arising from the minutes. We will move to awarding of tenders, and this is the award of base network and Wi-Fi equipment for the community hub. Mr. Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The following memo is in relation to the base network and Wi-Fi equipment needed for the community and business hub. I have worked with our Municipal Joint Services Board and their IT staff over the last few months to determine what's needed for the equipment. I could go through the equipment if Council wishes. It's basically a bunch of switches and software and routers to do the IT work and facilitate the Wi-Fi equipment. The Elements is the primary backbone. We will be back to Council in July with more IT-related equipment, but it's more for the program space than it is for the base build. Municipal Joint Services is using CDW, which is under the provincial standing offer. The budget that we have for it is in line with our overall budget for the community hub, so we're still on par for where we want it to be. I do have one correction. My apologize to your worship and council. I rushed this memo, and I have an alternative that is an alternative from the last memo that I cut it and paste. So the alternative is not to use Johnson Controls. They are not an alternate to this option. The alternative would be to use CDW directly ourselves, but we'd still have to use Municipal Joint Services to install and configure the equipment. With that, I'm happy to open for any questions. Hopefully not technical.
Any questions for Mr. Waters on this? I just want to understand, if anybody, while people are maybe coming up with a question, you're saying this is just for the programming area, or no?
No, this is for our entire backbone, for the business hub and for the programming space, and for the event space. So it's Wi-Fi for the building, but it's also the connections that will allow us to interrupt between one another.
Councillor Oik.
And just a follow-up with that regarding what the mayor just asked, just to clarify. So this is just kind of like like you said, the backbone of it, and then on top of this will be other equipment that's needed for it to be able, for people to be able to use it?
Yes, to some degree. We, like our staff that's going over there, we have our own equipment, so we just take it over, we plug it in, and it works. The library staff that has their equipment, like their individual laptops, they just bring those with them and they plug them in. We have some other laptops and desktops that will be bought for the programming space, so those will be coming later on. There's not a whole lot of extra things that are needed. It's really just the backbone to allow the system to communicate with one another in the building.
Will people, because if I recall, there will be outside area for people to sit, will they be able to connect to the Wi-Fi outside? Will the equipment allow them to go through those cement walls to get to outside? Because sometimes that is a problem.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't have an answer for you on that. I can speak to IT and Municipal Joint Services and come back to you, but I don't have an answer on that.
Just as a follow-up to that, I'm thinking about the cafe space, and because that's one of the big attractions to cafes is that you can actually connect to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, the intent in the building is to have Wi-Fi coverage throughout the building. That's the intent of this. I apologize, I did not ask IT if Wi-Fi would work outside the building. I'd have to come back to council on that.
A second question I had was in regard to this. I realize this is the internet, the Wi-Fi connection for buildings, but how this connects, we have public space that may be used for performance or entertainment, and I'm thinking about bands and music and other performances that may take place in the community space, and I'm just wondering how all that got factored into planning for this.
Yeah, council already approved that equipment. That's in the AV equipment. There is a fiber backbone in the building that will allow the Dante equipment to work, but we already purchased all that equipment. This is just the Wi-Fi and then the network backbone to allow us to do it. There is fiber internet in the actual building. We won't connect via Wi-Fi for that equipment. There's actually data connections in the event space to allow for that. Now, if somebody wants to go in that room and watch a band or something like that and connect on their Wi-Fi, they'll be able to do that under this, but the actual connecting of the equipment, that's based on a fiber backbone that's in the building. That's part of what we're doing in the fit up and the AV cost, which is already factored in.
Councillor Smith.
Just to Councillor Oikel's point, I would be very interested as well in hearing more about access to Wi-Fi outside the building, in the public spaces, and if it were like a public Wi-Fi spot that people could pick up Wi-Fi, that would be extra good.
Yep, I can either come back to council in the next council session and update them on that, or I can send a communication out, whatever council prefers.
I think if you just send it out to let us know whether that's covered or not, that'll be fine. Would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council approve the base network and Wi-Fi equipment project for the community hub to the Municipal Joint Services in the amount of $27,531.66, excluding HST, to be funded from the community hub budget, and I so move.
And a seconder for the motion, seconded by Councillor Bell. Is there further discussion or question on the motion? Councillor Wickle.
Yeah, if it comes back that this service wasn't including be able to go outside, will it be possible for them to put together something and you present it to council? Because I think it is an important aspect of the community hub to be able to have that in the public spaces outside.
Yeah, 100%. That would be in addition to the existing, the beauty of a backbone, it's the base build. So if it doesn't do what council wishes to do, we would come back. I do have contingency left in my overall budget, so I do have some dollars. I don't expect it would be much. If it does what we want it to do now, great. If not, we expected in this that there would be some things that we would be aware of as we went forward, and if this doesn't cover, we'll definitely do that. Yep.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We have no presentations scheduled and correspondence, recommendations from committees and boards. We'll now move to staff reports and call on the Planning and Development Services Department to bring forth the discussion around our first reading on the municipal-wide planning strategy and land use bylaw. This is the culmination of many years of work, and for this council, a year and a half of work. So tonight is an important night, and we'll welcome you to summarize where we are in the process, and we'll look forward to moving it through the next step. I'm not sure who's leading the discussion. Mr. Merrill?
Yeah, so Ms. Gindy and Ms. Young prepared a presentation tonight, so I'll turn it over to Ms. Gindy to start us off.
Yes, I'll just wait for the presentation to be, is it on? I think you need to use the HDMI. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Tonight, staff will be presenting Draft 3 of the proposed municipal-wide planning strategy and land use bylaw, including the key revisions that have been made since Draft 2. Following this presentation, Council will have the opportunity to discuss the proposed planning documents and determine next steps regarding first reading and scheduling of a public hearing. My name is Ella Gindy. I'm a Planner 2 with the Municipality of the District of Lunenburg. Joining me today, Jeff Merrill, Director of Planning and Development Services, and Rosemary Young, Planner 1. We are happy to answer questions at the end of the presentation. Tonight's agenda, tonight's presentation will provide a brief overview of the project, where we are in the process, and the key changes that have been made between Draft 2 and Draft 3, and the next steps moving forward. The focus of this evening is not to review every policy and regulation in the documents, but rather to highlight the revisions that have occurred since the previous draft and explain how staff arrived at the current version before Council. So, how did we get here? This project began as a result of provincial legislative requirements. In 2018, the province required all municipalities in Nova Scotia to adopt comprehensive planning documents and zoning for all lands within their boundaries. These documents must address the statement of provincial interest and the minimum planning requirements established by the province. Some of the statement of provincial interests are, for example, housing, infrastructure, drinking water, protection of agricultural land, floodplain, and infrastructure. However, this project is about more than simply meeting a legislative requirement. It has provided an opportunity to bring together multiple planning documents into a single municipal-wide framework, to establish zoning for all lands within MODL, and create a clearer and more consistent approach to managing future growth and development. The new planning documents also provide direction on important topics such as housing and other statement of provincial interest, but in addition to that, also transportation, heritage conservation, and other economic development topics. Throughout this multiple-year process, Council, the Planning Advisory Committee, residents, stakeholders, and agency partners have provided significant input that has helped shape the draft documents before you tonight. It is worth noting that MODL is the only municipality in Nova Scotia to not complete this requirement. What's involved in this project? This project involves two primary planning documents: the Municipal Planning Strategy, which establishes Council vision and policy direction for future growth and development for the entire municipality. The Land Use Bylaw. The Land Use Bylaw document implements those policies through regulations and zoning requirements. And what is zoning? Zoning is the tool that regulates how land can be used by dividing the municipality into different zones and establishing permitted uses and development standards for each area. One of the most common questions we received is how these planning documents will affect residents and their properties. The most significant change is that all properties within the municipality of the District of Lunenburg will be subject to zoning. For areas that already have planning documents and zoning in place, such as Hebville, Riverport District, Princess Inlet and Area, Oakland, Black House, Osprey Village, and Hemford Forest, those existing secondary planning strategies and land use bylaws remain in effect and are not being replaced through this process. However, the proposed municipal-wide land use bylaw contains a number of general provisions that will apply municipal-wide, including within some of those planning areas. Where multiple regulations apply to a property, the more restrictive regulation will apply. So for example, if you have an inland watercourse setback in a certain planned area that is, for example, 15 meters, if this proposed municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw recommends or proposes 20 meters, then the most stringent policy would apply. For properties located outside of those planned areas, this project establishes planning policies and zoning for the first time. Existing homes, businesses, and other lawful uses will continue to be permitted and will not be required to change as a result of the adoptions of these documents. Another common question we received, as I mentioned last, is how existing homes, buildings, and businesses are treated under the proposed planning documents. existing homes, buildings, and uses can continue without requiring any changes. These are referred to in the draft documents as lawfully existing uses. In some cases, an existing building or use may not meet one or more of the new regulations. When this occurs, it may become what is known as legal non-conforming use or structure, often referred as grandfathered. Legal non-conforming uses and structures are permitted. They may be repaired, maintained, rebuilt following damage, and in many cases expanded, subject to provisions of the land use bylaw. While existing development can continue, any new development or future changes to a property will generally be required to comply with the regulations in effect at the time of development. Where are we in the process? We are now approaching the final stages of the project, which began in 2020, as the mayor mentioned before. Over the past 6 years, staff have undertaken extensive public engagement, including open houses, information sessions, stakeholder meetings, surveys, planning advisory committee meeting, and numerous council discussions. Throughout the process, 3 drafts of municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw have been prepared, reviewed, and refined based on feedback received from residents, stakeholders, and the Planning Advisory Committee, and finally directed by council. Following the release of Draft 2 earlier this year, staff conducted another round of public engagement and consultation and reviewed all comments received. The feedback, together with direction provided by council, informed revisions that are now reflected in Draft 3. Tonight's presentation focuses on those key revisions before council determines whether to proceed with first reading and schedule a public hearing. I will pass it now to Rosemary to present and explain what changes have happened from Draft 2 to Draft 3.
Thank you, Ella. I'll now walk council through the key changes between Draft 2 and Draft 3, and rather than going through every detail, I'll focus on the most important updates and what they mean in practice. So I'll start with changes to definitions, which help clarify how the bylaw is interpreted and applied. Several definitions have been clarified to improve consistency and reduce ambiguity. This includes updates to definitions for dwellings, recreational vehicles, tiny houses, short-term rentals, and heavy equipment sales and rentals. We also added new definitions such as places of assembly and foundation, and replaced the term farm supportive use with agricultural use to better reflect the range of permitted agricultural activities. Overall, these changes are meant to make the document clearer and easier to administer. The next set of changes relates to land use and development regulations. Several revisions were made to improve flexibility while still maintaining appropriate controls. For example, we've added more flexibility for redevelopment projects in the mixed-use service zone, and it added flexibility for undersized lots within the protected watershed overlay. We've also increased the number of days a recreational vehicle can be occupied without a development permit from 90 days to 180 days. We've also clarified several provisions, including setbacks, fencing, home-based businesses, and non-conforming structures. In addition, we've refined the rules around legal non-conforming structures near inland watercourses and wetlands, essentially allowing for side additions in certain cases where they might not have been allowed in Draft 2. A minimum setback of 7 meters has also been established for existing undersized lots near these features to better balance development with environmental protection. Next, I'll highlight changes related to agricultural and rural policies. Key updates were made to better support agricultural land use while managing growth. Cluster developments are now prohibited in the draft in the rural agricultural potential zone to help preserve agricultural land. We've also removed the phase timing restriction on subdivisions in this zone. Now, in the rural agricultural potential zone in the draft, a maximum of 6 lots can be subdivided from a lot as it existed on the effective date of the municipal planning strategy, as opposed to what was in Draft 2, which was a maximum of 2 lots per year to a total of 6. Finally, a new policy has been added to allow consideration of rezoning where lands in the rural agricultural potential zone can be partially or fully serviced. The final category of changes relates to mapping and administrative updates. These changes focus on improving clarity and accuracy. This includes clear environmental features mapping and updated inset map labeling. Previously, they were numbered, and now they are labeled from A and so on, A, B, C, and so on. Population projections have also been updated based on the fall 2025 housing market study. In addition, the growth center designation has been refined to better reflect long-term servicing capacity and water infrastructure planning over the next 10 to 20 years. I'll now pass it over to Ella to discuss next steps.
Next slide, thank you. Thank you, Rosemary. Should council choose to proceed with the first reading this evening, staff will move into the final phase of the project. As part of the process, planning staff will undertake additional public education and outreach efforts to help residents understand the proposed municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw and how the regulations may apply to their properties. Staff anticipates holding 2 public information sessions prior to the public hearing, 1 in person and 1 virtual, to provide residents with an opportunity to learn more about the planning documents and ask questions. The public hearing is tentatively proposed for June 24th, 2026. Members of the public can provide written feedback by June 22nd, 5 p.m., or provide verbal feedback at the public hearing. That is determined if council conducts first reading today. Following the public hearing, council may consider second reading and adoption of the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. If adopted by council, the documents would then be forwarded to the province for review before coming into effect. This concludes today's presentation. Here are some of the recommendations to council that you'll find in the report. Open to any further questions that you may have, and thank you for your time.
Typically, this would be a time when we would have questions from the public. We don't have anyone in the gallery tonight, so I will open it to council for any questions that they have or clarifications that are required on the documents, as we will move to a motion at some point. But right now, I would like us to have any questions or discussion regarding the work that's been presented to us. So the floor is open. Councillor Smith.
My first question is around home-based business and how it appears in the documents. There's a bit of a confusion between the track changes document and the document that's in our package. So on page 61 and 62 in the track changes document, there's a whole bunch X'd out. And then in our agenda package on 58 of the land use bylaw, there's an error reference, source not found. Can you just tell me what's...
The error reference was adjusted today, so that was just a formatting issue that we noticed today. It was adjusted to make sure that the sequencing was correct. I think the error specifically was in reference to when you convert sometimes a document from Word to PDF, there can be an error issue if there's a link to a certain spot in a document, and that's what there was. It was a reference to a certain spot in the document, and the reference kind of got mixed up in the conversion from Word document to PDF. So we've updated that and removed that error reference message to the copy on the Engage page. In terms of the track changes document, I think that would have just reflected a move in the table, and sometimes with track changes, when you move a table, it shows everything crossed out and everything, it shows as if the whole table was redone.
Okay, other questions? Councillor Smith.
On tiny houses, there's been a change between draft 2 and draft 3. And I know that we had discussed this at the, when we reviewed the changes from PAC. But since I've had some feedback from residents on it, and so what has been changed in this draft is that tiny houses on wheels will not be allowed. They will have to be on a foundation. And just according to some quick research I've done, and maybe someone else can confirm from planning whether this is accurate, tiny houses can conform to the RV standard that we're citing when they're on wheels. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't allow that. Yeah, and there's also just some, I would like more information, and maybe this can, I can look into this between now and the public hearings, but the changes in the building code that make tiny houses more acceptable in the building code, that would be nice to know a little bit more about before this whole plan is finalized, because, you know, we had really looked at tiny houses as one of the solutions that people are using because of the housing crisis. And I just want to make sure that we're not like cutting off options for people at the last minute with some of these changes.
I can attempt to answer that, and then if any of my colleagues have anything to add, please feel free. So as you mentioned, we have a standard referenced in the definition for a recreational vehicle. So certain tiny houses that meet that standard would be permitted under that definition.
Okay.
As per the definition of the standard. Tiny houses, if they don't meet that standard, would have to be on a foundation, but that is really just to kind of prevent those makeshift, sometimes dwellings that can at times be unsafe, and to help make sure that we're making sure that that dwellings meet a certain standard.
Do you have other questions, Councillor Smith?
On the RV standard, I'm wondering where that came from, whether we did any consultation before we put that into the draft, because I think that, you know, we had spoken to people between draft 1 and draft 2 about the RV standard, about RVs, and we didn't have that standard in place. So I'm just wondering if yeah, there was any consultation about that.
Not formally. There was consultation internally with our building department, as well as informally, anecdotally, with a kind of local RV company, but that was just through a separate conversation. It wasn't specifically intended to be comprehensive consultation. So the definition was added for the similar reason of making sure that recreational vehicles meet a certain standard and a safety standard, and the CSA Z240, which is referenced in the definition, is basically a minimum safety requirement for recreational vehicles. And we also added equivalent standard in the definition so that in case there's something we're missing there would be a definition captured, or there could be an opportunity to capture that equivalent in that definition.
Councillor Burns, I know you're online. Did you have a question or comments you wanted to put on the record before?
I did.
Yeah.
I did, but I was going to do so after the motion was made, when Councillor
Okay.
spoke to the motion.
Okay. Questions, other questions people have? Counselor Smith, did you have more, or? Counselor Vino, while you're thinking.
Not a question. We've had lots of opportunities to ask questions along the way, and I feel you've answered them all. I just wanted to make sure I heard correctly that we're changing the RV date from 90 to 180. Great.
Correct.
I have some residents that were waiting for that date. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that. Thank you.
Yes, for the record.
Any other questions? Yep, Counselor Smith.
I wondered if you could expand on the new policy that was added around R2 lands and municipal servicing. This was not something that was part of our discussions throughout this process, so I will say I was surprised to see it come up at the very last minute at the first reading. So I would like to hear where it came from and why we're seeing it now.
I can answer that. After our last council meeting, we looked at our mapping and we realized that there are some areas that are currently mapped as RU2 that have the potential in the future to be partially or fully serviced by municipal services, so water and sewer. This is meeting one of the statements of provincial interest regarding two of them actually, housing and infrastructure, having the ability to increase density in a certain area and avoiding fragmentation in another area. So hence, that's why we added that policy to enable rezoning in areas that might be able to be serviced in the future. One of the rationales for that was also that it would be easier to rezone these lands if that policy is in place under the municipal planning strategy. If that policy was not there, it would have been the rezoning of those parcels in the future would be much more of a challenge. So that was one of the rationales for that. We looked around and we understood that we are actually, in order to meet all the statement of provincial interest, we need to add additional policies into the document.
Anything else? I just want to make sure everyone gets their questions clarified before we move to putting the motion on the floor, because... Anything else, Councillor Smith? You look like you still have a question. No?
I mean, if council's okay with that, I have another clarification.
Sure,
I mean,
go.
some of these things, this one in particular, I didn't ask before, not because it wasn't in the plan, but because a resident just brought it to me this week.
No, now's the time to ask the questions, so go ahead.
The vegetative buffer, especially in areas where you're in that wildland-urban interface, can be kind of problematic because of risk of wildfire. And I just wanted to confirm my reading of the policy around the vegetative buffer, because the way it's written now, you can build a home 15 meters away from the high water mark. Sorry, 20. And the vegetative buffer has to come 15 meters. So there's only 5 meters between a building and the vegetative buffer. So at some Fire Smart meetings, people have raised, you know, the Fire Smart recommendations are that you would not have flammable vegetation within about, I think, 10 meters of the home. So that policy says that you can remove vegetation that's dangerous. Could that be interpreted through the Fire Smart lens to be like conifers or other like really flammable plants?
So currently, as it's written, is that the vegetation should stay in its natural state, but there is the ability to do some clear cutting for access to the water or for views. In addition to that, you have the provision to remove any deceased or harmful type of vegetation within that prescribed area. So I'm assuming, yes, there is the ability to remove some of those conifers and trees that might be considered a harmful vegetation next to a house. It will be good if they can replace it with a different type of vegetation around it. Again, it's something that will be very hard to regulate in terms of actually going to each property and actually viewing what type of vegetation was removed or not. However, any type of harmful or diseased type of vegetation may be removed.
Just on that point, I think there certainly are jurisdictions in the country. I think if you go into British Columbia, you will see changes have been made and those kind of restrictions, and we may get to that, but at a beginning level, we have to start somewhere, and this is the place. But I think as our communities become more aware of some of the issues around fire smart strategies, this may come back to us, but I think in communities that have adopted it, it's often in new building areas, new developments, or in new construction in I'm thinking about some of the areas in northern British Columbia and in the Kelowna area in the interior where there's a lot of building and also a lot of risk. So I think this isn't something that we won't have discussions about in the future, but this is a starting point, and we will see this as our communities become more interested in fire smart programming. I think it is new to many, and our awareness about what may come will be heightened, I think, over the next few years. And our planning will have to follow that to accommodate that. Councillor DeLong.
Yeah, on the same topic, it says on page 28 that council may conduct a wildfire risk study. What does that entail, and is that in different districts, or is that within the whole of modal?
It is a policy that states that council may consider in the future creating that type of study. It's not something that is said in a sense that council will. It's something that would be a consideration, as the mayor just mentioned, and also Councillor Smith. Wildfires are becoming a bit more of a concern as we go, and with climate change, we see them, they're becoming more prevalent. And if council in the future considers to create some type of a study to be more fire smart and understand what are the steps council would like to take and suggest to residents, that's what the policy means. It's more of a future option. I think you're referring to the municipal planning strategy, which is where the policies and vision for the future is where council sees growth goes. So one way is how do we protect our residents from wildfires in the future?
Any other questions for clarification on any aspect of this? Are we prepared to put a motion on the floor? Someone willing to do that? Councillor Bell, please.
To Mayor McLean, Weil, and members of MODL Council, I move that Municipal Council give notice of its intention to repeal the existing municipal planning strategy bylaw 35 and the municipal-wide land use bylaw 49, including all subsequent amendments thereto, and replace them with the proposed new municipal planning strategy and the municipal-wide land use bylaw, both dated June 2nd, 2026, as presented and Further, conduct first reading of the proposed planning documents. I so move.
And a seconder, seconded by Councillor Hubley. Now, is there discussion on the motion? Councillor Burns, would you like to speak to the motion now?
Sure, thank you very much. And apologies to be the first one to start on this. This won't be a surprise. I've told this to many folks at previous meetings. I've been doing a lot of soul searching on this. And tonight I will not be voting in favor of the motion. And this is specifically related to just the plan for the protection of agricultural lands. And what I've heard is a mismatch of what we're doing. I very much understand why we're doing it this way. But the feedback has just been telling, and like I know we're addressing the class 3 soils. The feedback I'm getting from folks in an area that will have a lot of this kind of zoning is there's a mismatch between what they hope to see protected and what we are protecting. And, you know, the power we exercise as a council with zoning is a great power, and it's a great power because it's designed to bring up collective benefits that are great that we would not achieve without it. And I understand that is why the province is mandating this. So I understand the scheme, but with all of that, I have to be able to tell people that I think we got it right when we exercise that power, and I just can't say it on that point. There are many other things in this document that are fantastic, and I did get a lot of great feedback from folks about a number of the other things, and a lot of feedback from folks who appreciated how much this council was willing to listen. And my vote tonight is not against the process or even really against the opinions of many of you that I think will be different than mine. I think the process that was undertaken here, the efforts and the leadership that came from the mayor and councilors, and in order to make sure that residents were listened, the time that has gone into in this council is spectacular. The amount of staff effort it's taken to move this forward is not appreciated. In fact, I have a great awe of it, and I think that other municipalities should look to this as a model of what to do when you're facing larger scale issues, and I hope it's discussed at future conferences and future learning opportunities for others, because I think there's a lot here. So I just wanted to say that while I have to respect the fact that we had the process, I have to respect the fact and listen to the feedback that I'm receiving on it. And I know that many of you will probably be voting differently tonight, and that is quite okay. It's a reflection of the feedback you're hearing from your residents and from the people that you know and the people who are coming to you. But I need it to be true to what I'm hearing specifically. And if that puts me out of step with many of you, it's just the way the process is supposed to work, and I think that's okay. And lastly, I just wanted to say that, you know, in the future, and I intentionally don't want to confuse what I'm about to say with what we're doing tonight, but I hope to in the future bring a discussion to council about the opportunities, what appropriate mechanisms may be at a municipal level to help protect some of the lands that wouldn't otherwise be protected through zoning protections, and what ways individuals can choose to protect their lands on their own that wouldn't be caught up in what we're doing here. And so very much looking forward to that discussion. I think that will help bridge a gap that I think we're going to create. And I hope that regardless of my vote tonight, that many of you would still be excited for that discussion in the future as well.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Bell?
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to comment on this. I remember many individuals who told me we don't want MPS's bylaws in place. This being voiced over the last couple of years. Then, after a shale pit was proposed within one of my neighborhoods, and after a property located in another community start locating several trailers on a single lot, and after several townhouses were proposed in another neighborhood, I was suddenly asked, why don't you have municipal-wide planning? Nobody wants planning until it directly affects them or their neighborhood. Then they ask, why haven't we done the protection that we need? Most don't really care in its effects until it affects them personally. So this leads me to my beliefs right now. This MPS was years in the making, and can it be a bylaw that makes everyone completely happy? No, the answer is no, because I think you can never make everybody happy. But I do think 90% of this bylaw we got right. And that will please about 70% of the people I represent. That's a pretty good margin, I think. The only part I have some concerns about is the area about farmland and how they interface sometimes with agricultural lands and forest lands, and how we drew that line. And that is, or may be, confusing to some people based on soil types. But I'm satisfied that we got it as correct as we can right now. However, the other 90% of the proposed bylaw, I believe we got it right as we can, and it was the result of public input that was made as part of the process. Thinking of all the work that staff has done, all the citizens that came out to talk to us, and the revisions at the request of council, and I tried to make sure I was present at least 50% of those meetings, including being in here on several Thursdays in the late afternoon. I think I have a clear understanding of what I was being told. I believe this is a great start to meet the requirements of the province, and it will meet, for the most part, what the citizens of MODL want. If we have concerns or areas that might be concerns, we have a review process that can allow the twigging to our beginning bylaw. We have to start somewheres. And like Councillor Burns says, it is something we need to continue to nurture as we do this and go forward. While Mr. Burns and myself will be voting on opposite sides, we do share common ground on this area of knowing we have to continue to listen, and this might not be a final project or finished product at this time. As it's being proposed by our planning professionals, I will be supporting this bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I also will support this bylaw. I'm not going to repeat everything that everybody else said, but not that I could. But the fact is, when I look back to the first public meeting that was held in New Germany, and the uproar and the chaos that was in that building at the Legion that night, and the just terrible thoughts and comments. And then we sit here tonight and we worked hard. You guys have worked hard. You listened to us. You listened to the people. And we sit here tonight and we have nobody in the galley. Thank you.
Other people who wish to speak? Councillor Smith?
Yeah, I will not be voting in favor, which is completely shocking to me because I worked really hard on this process, and I, just echo Councillor Burns' comments about, how thorough, how kind of transparent and engaging we were on this topic, on this whole project. But it's for that reason that at the very last minute, when a new policy comes in on the most controversial piece of this plan, which is the RU2 zone, I just feel like there should have been a staff report. I would have appreciated a staff report. And when I compare draft 2 and draft 3 and see that some RU2 that has been, is now falling into a proposed zone of mixed use, I just don't feel like there has been enough, after all the information that we've gone through, for there to be a big change like that at the last minute without a report that is more kind of extensive than what we saw tonight. I can't support it. And part of it is because I do have a lot of RU2 in my district. And when I brought concerns forward, especially around the lake shore, and that people, who own property on certain lakes will probably not, may not be able to subdivide. I was, the message from council was consistency. Consistency is key. So, and that class 3 soil, no matter where it is, needs to be protected. And then for a policy to come in at the last minute that provides an exception, I would have preferred that we did a bit more thinking about that and looked at the maps, at the properties that we were changing the zoning for. I just think that would have been more transparent at this point. And we could still do that. But I figured this will probably pass tonight. I'll vote against and look forward to the public hearing where, some more questions and requests for clarification might come forward.
Others who wish to speak to the motion? I will make some closing comments, seeing no one else is in line to speak. As your mayor, I think my role is to think big about what's good for all of the community. And I understand where individual councillors, based on the feedback they get in their particular area, may have particular concerns, and I am respectful of that. One of the things that I made very clear when I chose to run for this position and then was elected was that we needed to plan for growth. And this is part of what that means, is that we have a planning strategy. One of the things I heard while I went door to door was, particularly from those who had moved here, they were shocked that we had no rules about what went where. And I have not forgotten that, and it did align with my concern about how we plan for the growth ahead. And this experience as a council and with our community has really heightened my understanding about what's really important to people. And I think it reconfirmed the need for this document. And it represents, I think, a fair assessment of where we begin in terms of our planning. It isn't the end. We know that this is a beginning. We've already had a discussion about something that's become much more evident in the last year even, around fires and wildfires and how that may impact on our planning. So we know that we will continue to work with this. I think this is a fair document. It's not perfect. Are there areas that we think we should have gone further? Probably. Are there areas where we should have been less restrictive? Some will say yes, that we should have been. And some will say we should not have had this document at all. I don't believe that. That's why I'll be supporting it tonight, why I think it's fundamental to the development and growth of our community, and it provides a great beacon for what we will do in the future as this council and future councils in our planning and our development across for all communities. And that's how I'm thinking about this, and that is for the benefit of the entire district that we represent. With that, anyone else wish to comment? I'll call for the motion. All those in favor of the motion that's been presented by Councillor Bell signify by raising their hands. Those opposed? Councillor Smith and Councillor Burns are opposed. Those in favor, Reinhardt, Bell, Oikel, Hubley, Moore, McLean-Weil, DeLong, and Vino. The motion is carried. And there is a second part to a second motion that relates to this. If someone would put that motion on the floor. Councillor Moore, thank you.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and Council, I move that Municipal Council set a date and time for public hearing regarding the adoption of the new municipal planning strategy and municipal-wide land use bylaw on June 24th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in council chambers, and further direct the planning staff to undertake additional public information sessions prior to the public hearing to help inform residents about the proposed regulations and how they may apply to properties throughout the municipality, and I so move.
And a seconder for the motion. Seconded by Councillor Hubley. I know there's Deputy Mayor Vino raised an issue around the June 24th date, and I'm not sure if that's a problem or a problem to change it, or I know we've changed some other meetings to accommodate that, but
What?
we're kind of nodding that the 24th is.
Does it have to be in an evening?
I'm just getting back that afternoon. Mr. Merrill.
Yeah, so once you conduct first reading, you need to have 14 days notice of the public hearing. So the 24th was the earliest date possible. So if council wants to move that, you can move that ahead or later, so 25th, 26th, whatever, but it can't be the 23rd or earlier. And as far as the evening session, I realize we don't have anybody here this evening, but it is a major document. I'd recommend that you do have it in the evening for the public that may want to come out.
I'm just looking at the 25th, which is a Thursday, as a possible date. Are people okay with moving it? Sorry?
That is a PAC night, but, and we do have an item for PAC this month, but we could look at moving PAC is probably maybe easier than, trying to get all of council in.
So are we okay with the 25th then? All right.
Do you want me to amend the motion?
I think we could do a friendly amendment. I will accept a friendly amendment.
Okay, friendly is good. All right, so I make a friendly amendment that we move the public hearing to the date of June 25th, Thursday, June 25th, 2026, 6 p.m.
Yeah. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Oikel. All those in favor of the amendment, which is changing the date for the public hearing to June 25th? Motion is carried.
Oh, yeah, I was just seeing what you
The amendment is carried.
Yeah.
Now we're back on the motion, which is now changed to include the date of June 25th. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion as presented signify by raising their hands. Okay. Motion is carried unanimously. All right, thank you very much. We will move then to designated community fund under Recreation, Parks and Tourism, the Lunenburg Yacht Club. And Ms. Wenzel will present this.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So on behalf of your Recreation Director, Parks and Recreation and Tourism, Trudy Payne, I'm presenting this information to you for your consideration. The Lunenburg Yacht Club is raising $150,000 in capital funds to purchase additional boats for their Learn to Sail program. Recently, there were 3 donations totaling $13,700. The amount of $13,685 is recommended as $15, actually $5 per contribution, is retained by the district as an administrative charge under your policy MDL 48. The Designated Community Project Fund was established as a tool by the municipality to assist nonprofit groups who do not have charity status to raise funds for capital projects by providing the ability of the municipality to issue the tax receipts on to the donations, and then by a motion of council to approve the funds back to the program or to the group via a grant. This does support some of council's strategic priorities, including the regional economic development, as the yacht club is known to attract people all over the world for the many events that they host. Infrastructure upgrades, expansion, and management, as this initiative would be an investment in recreational assets that do provide access to water, as well as quality of life. Expanding their Learn to Sail program will not only teach more youth how to sail, but this activity also provides an avenue for social interaction. There's no implications to our budget or to the staff work plan. The alternatives for council is not to issue the grant to the Lunenburg Yacht Club. The Designated Community Project Fund, in conclusion, was developed and approved by the municipality to aid nonprofit groups in raising capital funds for project. Thank you.
Would someone put the motion on the floor? Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council grant the Lunenburg Yacht Club $13,685 as per the criteria outlined in the policy 048 Designated Community Project Fund, and I so move.
And a seconded by Deputy Mayor Vino. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move then to the Finance Department and the 2025-2026 proposed capital funding, fourth quarter capital variance.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So financing for our 25-26 capital projects has been allocated as per the approved budget, with some exceptions that are noted in the attached report that I gave to council in this. Changes do occur in our financing, sometimes when projects are completed over or under budget or new sources of financing are found. A summary of all the completed projects compared to the budget with the actuals is enclosed for your information. And that's why it serves as your fourth quarter variance report for the capital fund. It does outline the proposed funding of capital, and I did put the Canada Community Building Fund projects, but they have been rebranded, so that's kind of my bad. It's the Build Community Strong Fund Community Stream. But in this report, the BCSF will be the CCBF. So many of your capital projects were budgeted to be funded from reserves. Under Section 99(4) of the Municipal Government Act, council approval is required for all withdrawals from capital reserves. As well, council must also approve the CCBF, BCSF funding as per the the funding agreement. Compliance occurs when council approves a capital budget that shows withdrawals from reserves to fund capital expenditures. When funding changes are made at year end, council should be made aware of them and approval should be sought. Of the $18.3 million in approved capital budget that we had in 25-26, projects in the amount of $15.5 million were completed. Financing of these projects included $8,634,488 in provincial and federal grants, $5,677,586 from our general operating reserves, $132,151 from our depreciation reserves, $141,848 from our sewer reserves, and $36,952 from our climate sustainability reserves. The Canada Community Building Fund, or the BCSF, spending totals $967,923, which includes $98,113 for Nathan Cirillo backup power, $7,675 for culvert design for Spruce Lane, sewer pump for $19,521, the Mark Ballfield of $127,911, wayfinding of $326,746, Miller Point Peace Park, $82,597, Indian Falls Park of $198,350, contribution to trail groups of $75,756, and $31,697 for art on the trail. Council can approve the funding recommendations or direct staff to make adjustments. Staff has made this recommendation to ensure compliance with the Municipal Government Act and the federal CCBF BCSF agreement. Thank you.
Okay, this is seems to be a technical requirement of the legislation under which we operate. Would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Councillor Oikel. Thank you.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council approve the funding of the 2025-2026 completed criteria projects and CCBF investment as presented and summarized on the 2025-2026 capital projects and CCBF investment plan, and I so move.
And a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Bell. Is there discussion or questions that anyone has on the motion? Councillor Smith.
Can you just speak to the line on Indian Falls Park?
Certainly. What is your question?
The accessibility upgrades, the budget, actual $350,000 and actual $198,350. There were some carryovers.
Yes, that is
this year?
correct. Like this is what was actually spent as of March 31st, 2026.
Yeah.
Indian Falls is almost complete now.
Yeah.
So you carried over in your 2026-27 budget monies to finish that project. So there's quite a few projects in here that were carried over. Miller Park is also one of those projects where we didn't finish it all in the last fiscal, which is March 31st, so we carried over an approved budget to finish it. So we're just funding the cost as at year end, March 31st.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Then we will move to our mayors, deputy mayors, and councillor matters, and the correspondence policy as brought forward by Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith?
Thank you. So I'm bringing forward, as I said in the submission that appears in the package, that what I'm going to be asking for support is for council to ask staff to bring us an options report on developing a correspondence policy. And I've seen this at a few different municipalities and listened to some of their discussions. Sorry, my mouth is really dry. So I think that, you know, anything that I speak about is, you know, these are active conversations at municipalities across the province, and everyone does it a little bit differently. But I've really appreciated listening to conversations and talking to people at different municipalities about how correspondence is handled. And I just want to situate this to start within our strategic priority around communication and engagement. That was like a big priority for us when we got elected. People wanted more engagement from us, more transparency. And I think that we've really delivered in a big way on a lot of fronts. But I think our correspondence, the way we treat correspondence is an opportunity to go a little bit further. The other context for this is our IDEA lens and our commitment to accessibility and inclusion. And I'll just point to that as I go where it's relevant. So just to begin, like we don't include a lot of correspondence in our agenda packages. That's not something that we regularly do. But looking at other municipalities, it is fairly standard to include a range of correspondence in agenda packages, whether it's considered and there's an action taken on it, or if it's just for information. Often there's a lot of correspondence just gets included in agenda packages for information. It's not brought up, it's not discussed, it's not debated, but it's there for the public to view. So I think that there's a couple missed opportunities when we don't put more correspondence in our package. And the first one that I'll point out is around provincial correspondence. So when the province writes to us and says, you know, you have 12 months notice, this is what's coming. And I would point to, in particular, the May 15th letter from Minister Maslin to municipalities about the fire services. This is like really important information for the public, I believe. And I think it should just appear for information on our agenda. Another example is the June 3rd letter from the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture about a proposed marine shellfish and marine plant. And they clearly write to us that they're writing to us in an effort, and I'm quoting, in an effort to keep communities better informed about aquaculture activities in their area. And I think the most efficient way for us to share that information is to just put the letter on our agenda. It's public, we don't need to debate it, it's just there. And also in the category of like official correspondence with the province, we often vote at this table, make motions and vote to send letters. But then it's rare that, I think it's only happened once or twice during my term, that those letters then come back onto our agenda package so that people can see they made the motion and now they're, here's the letter that resulted. So I think that's another thing that could be in information in our agenda packages. And then the second major opportunity around correspondence that I see is that a lot of municipalities just, for information, include public input from their residents that is written correspondence in their packages. And, you know, I know that some people think, well, that'll lead to us getting a lot of hate mail that then we have to put on in our agenda packages, but correspondence policies lay out, you know, the same way we do at the beginning of a public input session at our meetings, that no profanity, no making threats, no personal comments. There's ways to manage which correspondence gets made public. But I think that a lot of residents, when they take the time to write a letter to us, or organizations that take the time to write a letter to us, and they think it's going to be on the public record, I would really like it just to be on the public record through our agendas. And also, as I mentioned, this is around inclusion and accessibility. Like, I don't understand why we would prize or favor people who can come to the mic to speak at one of our scheduled meetings. If someone wants to offer feedback on policy or an issue and have it on the public record, the same as public input.
I'm not sure what happened. I didn't.
Oh, I just want my name. I had my hand up, but I just
Okay.
told you to take my name.
Oh,
I said
okay.
to take it off.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
Nothing to say.
Councillor Bell, or Councillor Smith?
Okay. And the last thing I would say about that is, there's also, I've heard people say if you put too much correspondence in your agenda package, it just clutters it up, it's distracting, it's unfocused. I noticed that a lot of municipalities, in their council folder online, they will have a separate folder for information package. And that's where all the council correspondence goes that you're not going to consider actively at that meeting. Also really helpful because then it files it for councilors. You know how to return to that correspondence. Something else that I love that West Hants does, they even keep a ledger, a public ledger of correspondence received. You can go into their packages and see a ledger where all the letters they've received from the province or sent to the province, they're all there. I read their letter about libraries in 2025. It was so easy to access. So all of that said, I'm not asking for council to agree with me on any one piece of that, but I do think that we as a council should think about the opportunities for using correspondence and our agenda to enhance those commitments that we made to communication and engagement. And those are some of the ideas that I have had just looking at what's happening in other municipalities. And to me, it's a really interesting conversation, lots of opportunities, and I'd be really interested in hearing what other people think about this.
I just want to maybe preface and begin the conversation with my kind of view of how we deal with correspondence. If I receive anything as mayor that's addressed to mayor and councillors, it's circulated, an FYI for all council members. If it's an issue, a response to something that we have written about, often we don't get a response to some of the things that we write about. I circulate it. If I get an email from a resident that's addressed to mayor and council, it's circulated to everyone. The number of emails that I get to go on the public record, that would certainly add a lot to the agenda. But on the government, I think the priority you're suggesting, Councillor Smith, is around government communication or groups. And I think one of the things that we also have been clear about is trying to stay focused on our strategic priorities and allowed plenty of discussion for those items that are of top priority for us. And if there were actions required by any communication that we received, those come forward through the agenda process. So I too have looked at how other councils deal with, because I watch a number of other council meetings, and I do see times where I feel the council gets derailed a bit by the discussion and doesn't have time to maybe focus on the things that are more of a priority. That would be my kind of thinking around it, and that's why we have been doing it the way we are. Now, if there's agreement that we ask staff to do a report on this, recognizing that that's not in our list of things, we may have to wait for that report. But if council's wish is to move in that direction and have a staff report brought forward, we can request it. It will derail some of the other work that we're dealing with, and I'm not sure what the time frame, and Tom can speak to this at some point, but I just wanted to be clear how I was viewing this, because I do, and the deputy mayor and I meet weekly on the agendas that are going to be put before you. So if there's a desire to have a deeper dive into this, then we will do that. But no, I thought it was important you know my approach to this. And if that's not the wish of council, then we will ask for the report and then take it from there. So with that, I do have a little list. Councillor Bell, DeLong, and then Hoopley.
Councillor Moore, were you ahead of me?
I was, but I'm just going to hold back for a minute.
Okay, if I'm clear to go. I don't think that we need a policy on everything. Such a request is overreach on correspondence. If someone writes a letter to their councillor or their mayor, they need to be assured that their correspondence remains a private matter between them and the council person that they chose to contact. We also have set an agenda plan for our strategic priorities for 4 or 5 years. When we first got together as a council, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to everything unless we are willing to commit to additional service, meeting here in chambers an additional day, because we keep adding to the list. If an individual wants everyone to know their concern, it's always been our policy that they can address their correspondence to mayor and council. And to my knowledge, that correspondence has always been already circulated. It may not be something that needs to be included in the agenda, but we as councillors are made aware of the thinking that is out in the public here and may or may not need to be addressed. Frankly, I'm not interested in any additional mail that may not be addressing the concerns that are our concern, or areas not identified as our responsibilities within the Municipal Government Act. I think it leads to confusion when we would circulate letters of the province's intent. Let them do their own work. That's what their MLAs are for. I don't want it in the agenda so someone calls and asks me what my feelings are about something that I have really no control of. Now, you use the example of the Fire Service Act that might be upgraded. That is something that was going to affect municipalities directly, and I made sure I contacted every fire chief in my area, and I made sure that I talked to many firefighters in my district and beyond, because I knew that it was something that would affect us. While I do have a fair understanding of the fire service, I don't necessarily understand how people would react to it. So I was prepared, but it didn't need to be in our agenda right away. I do not want to lessen trust that I've built up between my constituents and myself. They contact me knowing I have a reliable level of trust not to circulate their correspondence unless I need guidance from the mayor or the CAO. And I've taken that step before, but I don't even share my correspondence names with them unless I'm asked by the municipal clerk to do so. But they know the information is available if they want it. I won't be supporting this consideration in relation to external correspondence. And assigning additional projects to staff at this time is not a priority to me. Agenda packages right now are large enough, and I do make sure I read mine, but I'm not sure every councillor does. So if we want to make the agenda packages extra large, then that's something that the rest of my colleagues around the table here, I'd be willing to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Councillor DeLong.
I think that asking for clarity and having a policy on communications can only be a helpful thing. If there are best practices out there and other municipalities that are posting their correspondence, asking staff to provide a report, I think that's reasonable. You know, it might not happen in any short time frame given how much workload staff already has, but it can go on the to-do list. Giving residents the opportunity to view correspondence sent to mayor and council is, you know, it is a move towards greater transparency, and it allows residents to ask more questions and gain better understanding of what the issues are in their municipality. So yeah, I would like to hear more about best practices. I don't think that correspondence between residents and individual councillors would probably be part of any policy on correspondence, but I would like to hear from staff what that policy might look like. So I would vote in favor of this, and I do think it aligns with a number of our strategic priorities.
Councillor Hoopley.
So you commented that we could pick and choose, and I don't think we could. The correspondence that we would put in the agenda, I think it would have to be all or nothing. It would defeat the purpose of the policy. I get a lot of emails, and some of them are regarding hardship and lack of housing and current living conditions. And to me, to put out correspondence like that would be flaunting hardship, and I would not be in favor.
Councillor Oikel.
Although I understand the concerns that Councillor Bell has regarding letters from the public, I think that the policy could cover specific things, because that's what you put a policy together to cover certain things, not everything, which we have, constantly am doing. And I think knowing that the letter, two things that I'm really interested in having in the agenda would be having it stated under correspondence, letters that were directed by council to be sent, which were public, and that to have it in the correspondence that those letters were sent, so that the public knows that we did do what we said we were going to do. Also, letters from the province, like the ones that we just received, would certainly let the public know why we have to pivot sometimes, and that we have to change things, that directions that we're going, because the province has now mandated us to do certain things, and so we have to pivot and change. And having those letters, I think, in the correspondence for the public to see would help would help with our, I don't know what the right word is to use, but I think it would help. And like I said, the policy doesn't have, is to be very, can be very specific, and policies should be very specific. And I would be in favor of looking into it and seeing what we can come up with that would be supportive of our residents for information that they should have.
Counselor Moore.
Well, I'm confused. So a policy like this could be this big, or it could be this big, correct? Okay. I'm looking at the one from Colchester right now, and I'm like Councillor Hobley, there's things that I get in writing that is to me, and if it's important enough that it goes on an agenda, it comes to Elspeth and Tom, and then we go from there. But as for me sitting, I have enough to read. As for me sitting down and okay, I'm going to back up. As for our provincial correspondence, I'm quite satisfied with the way the letters come out to us that come to the municipality and come to the mayor, and she forwards them to us. I think it's our responsibility as a councillor that if it's something in there that you know is going to affect your residents, that it's public knowledge and you address that yourself. So I really don't think the bottom line is that we need this right now, maybe in the future, but I really don't think we need this right now, with all due respect.
Okay. Counselor Reinhardt.
Yeah, I would appreciate looking into this, having staff look into this. It's something that I raised some questions about early on, and it was mainly in relation to the accessibility issue. I did have residents who contacted me who just were not able to come to public input for a variety of different reasons. And they were asking me how they could have things put on the record. So I would appreciate if we had something that would allow for that. So I'm mainly focused on that part of it. But I think also including correspondence from the province back and forth is a good way to provide a full picture of what happens after we vote to send a letter to Public Works or Department of Environment or whoever. Then the public can see we did send that letter. And they can also see if the province chose to respond or not, which I think is important for them to know as well.
Deputy Mayor Vino.
Thank you. At this time, I don't support moving forward with this policy. We have not identified a problem with the current process that we have, nor have I received any concerns that would suggest a policy is needed. Creating and administering a new policy would require staff time and resources that could otherwise be dedicated to existing priorities. And for that reason, I believe our efforts are better focused on the projects already before us.
Councillor Burns, did you want to wade in with comment?
No, because I don't think that I have anything to say at this point that hasn't already been said.
Okay. Tom, I think, make a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. So just two comments for consideration. If council wanted to move ahead, I think it's important to appreciate the potential volume of work that you're creating, because emails are correspondence. They would become records. They're subject to FOIPOP. We have to protect personal and private information, so it would require redaction on a weekly basis. So if this is something that council wants to pursue, it is going to impact staffing. And as far as the work plan goes, last count, I think we had 135 items on the work plan that takes us into 2028. So if you want something added, as I said before, we have to take something off, because we regularly run into things that are added at no request of our own, like fire services. We have police review coming up. REMO standards have just been changed. So we're constantly responding to initiatives that are hoisted upon us by external bodies like the provincial government. And so it's challenged to come up with things. Although we're close to the end of the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw, we do have the secondary planning strategies that have to be addressed after that. And then the 5-year review of the coastal protection is in 2029. So there's lots of work to do. Certainly, if this is a priority of council that they want to see things done, I believe I also looked at Dan Troke just introduced a correspondence policy in 2025 in Colchester. It's incredibly short, but it does create a lot of work. If it was a ledger that we wanted to create, we could probably manage that through Laserfiche, but it would still require, that would just give you the basic information like they have in West Hants. So there's a lot of thought that would have to go into what's included, what's excluded, how do we deal with it, how do we record it. So it may appear as perhaps a small amount of work to come up with a policy paper, but it would actually require a lot of thought. And we already have a number of policies that we're working on that are in the work plan, like the dog control, the dog bylaw. We've got the personnel policy, we've got the procurement policy, privacy impact, which is now a new thing. So there's just a caution that what might look like a little bit of work can actually be larger than you might think at first blush.
Councillor Oikel, then I'm going to just get a straw vote on this.
So rather than coming up with a policy, is it possible to have for us to give direction if the rest of council is interested in it? Specifically, my concern regarding correspondence is when we publicly say we're going to write a letter, to actually show that we've written that letter rather than just telling us in our own private emails, so that because it was on the public record that we were going to write one, that it should be also on the public record that it was written, right? Whether or not we could do that as direction, if people are agreeable to that.
I think that becomes all part, like, picking and choosing out of what you want to do within that, I think we can quickly say that, but it should be framed in a bigger structure, I think, as to, I mean, I believe that if we say we're going to write a letter and a resident asked us, we would provide them with what we communicated. And, you know, I think our clerk takes detailed records on what we say we're going to do and follows up with action items. She keeps it right here in front of me. I can see where actions required and followed up. So if people aren't trusting that we're doing the letters or doing the follow-up, I think that would be wrong to think that. We are following up. The letters are written, and if someone wanted to see them, we would absolutely provide those. So I think if council asks us to do something from a direction point of view, that work, it gets carried out.
Not questioning that it is or isn't, right? I know that it is. Right. You know, we're very trustworthy people here around this table and have, you know, high integrity. And, but it's just public perception, and it's just a little thing. That's, you know, it was just a suggestion and a thought, just as direction to do it. It's just simple.
What I'm going to ask is for just a straw vote on who would like to proceed with following up on a communications policy and receiving a staff report. Those in favor.
Point of order. I had my hand raised to speak again, and I think our policy allows me to speak again. I do have a motion that I can put on the floor that people can vote for or not. But I just want to say that what I'm proposing that we look at is standard in other municipalities. It's not breaking them to put correspondence from the province for information on their agendas. Bridgewater does it, Lunenburg. It's pretty standard across the province. And also, letters from community groups, very standard to see them on agenda packages for information. I'm not asking for anything that is out of bounds in the municipal world. And the concerns about privacy, that's why you have a correspondence policy, so that you're really clear. Things that you receive of a personal nature, of an individual nature, that staff receives as an operational nature, do not go into agendas. But when someone contacts us about policy or a decision that we've made, and they address it to mayor and council, it's a public document, and it would go for information in a package so that the community can see, and it's part of the public conversation. It's openness, accountability, transparency. That is a strategic priority. And I'll just wrap up by saying, this is a concern for me. And as a first-term councillor, correspondence has been a bit of a mystery, to be honest, about how we deal with it, what comes forward, what doesn't. Which documents are public documents? I think I've recognized now that if the province sends, something to all municipalities, it's public. But for a long time, I thought it wasn't public because it wasn't appearing in our agendas. It's just a matter of being clear about correspondence, and I think correspondence, the way the public interacts with us and how we're open about that, is really important to our role. So I will just leave it there. And I appreciate everybody's time and thinking about this. And I know that after the land use planning, it's a long night. So thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to ask for a straw vote for those who would like to proceed with Councillor Reinhardt.
I just want a bit of clarification. So voting in favor of looking into a policy, that does not mean that we are saying it goes immediately to number 1 on the priority list, correct? It just kind of goes on.
No, it would go in the end.
Right, yes.
Because until council,
So
until council prioritizes it and puts it in a place,
okay.
It would go at the absolute end of the list of things that we're to do.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor DeLong.
Just to clarify, through the chair, I suppose, Councillor Smith, were you asking for a policy, or were you asking for an options report on whether or not a policy is a good idea?
I have a motion I can put on the floor. Why can I not put a motion on the floor?
Well, I haven't seen the motion. We weren't notified of a motion tonight.
I'm a member of council. I should not. I should be able to put a motion on the floor, especially when I have a report that comes forward.
Okay, go ahead. Deputy Mayor Vino.
In the past, when things have come forward as a councilor's matters, we usually do not an official motion, but a non-motion vote. Can you please maybe look to staff to clarify the difference between both and when it should be a motion versus a recommendation to staff? To me, I see this as a recommendation to staff, so just looking for clarification before a motion is put on the floor.
So direction to staff is done by way of motion. The challenge that we're running into, in a staff report that's brought forward, we give 7 days notice of a motion. If that 7 days notice isn't given, then the motion is introduced for the first time without any ability to review and comment on it. Not that it can't be done, but that's why our agendas go out 7 days in advance, and our staff reports have motions included in them, so that everyone can see what they are and comment on them in advance. So it's not to say that you can't introduce a motion off the floor, but it's the lack of notice to the rest of the council that is the issue that's most often brought up.
Thank you for the clarification.
I've said Councillor Smith can put the motion on the floor, and we'll see what the motion is and go from there. Councillor Smith, please.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that council request staff prepare an options report for a correspondence policy.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor DeLong. There's been lots of discussion, but is there further comment? Can you just say it again, Councillor Smith, because we don't have it written?
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that council request that staff prepare an options report for a correspondence policy.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Councillor Burns? No. And those opposed? Councillor Bell, Councillor Hubley, Councillor Moore, Deputy Mayor Vino, and McLean-Weil. Motion is, and Councillor Burns, sorry. Against? The motion is defeated. The last item on our agenda is the Deputy Mayor's report and the Mayor's report. Deputy Mayor Vino.
Thank you. Besides the normal agenda briefings and check signings, there is one event that I attended this past weekend on Saturday. I represented the municipality at the 62 Niobe Royal Canadian Sea Cadet Annual Review, Awards, and Ceremonies just down the road on Harold Wynot Road. Throughout the event, the dedication, professionalism, and pride demonstrated by the cadets were evident in every aspect of the program. The final speaker concluded with 3 simple but powerful takeaways to succeed. Number 1, be courteous. Understand that every interaction is an opportunity to make a positive impact. Number 2, be generous. Give freely of your time, your talents, and support, recognizing that strong communities are built through service to others. And 3, work hard. Success comes through dedication, perseverance, and a commitment to continually strive for improvement. And I left with those words when I left that day and wanted to share those with folks around the table. Thank you.
My report, there's 2 parts to it. The one I'll table tonight, but I also circulated to each of you this afternoon my report from Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which was last week or over the weekend. The last 2 weeks, I attended a conference on gender-based violence hosted by Mount St. Vincent University and Be the Peace Institute. The conference brought together municipal leaders, researchers, and staff from not-for-profit organizations from across the Halifax region. Presentations focused on current research as well as approaches to addressing the root causes of gender-based violence. The discussions were challenging and at times difficult to hear as presenters shared the complexity of the issue and its connection to poverty, education, and disability. One of the key themes was the importance of education and prevention as transformative tools, rather than focusing solely on criminal justice responses. I was particularly interested in learning about peer-to-peer education programs at the university level that help young people identify, understand, and address gender-based violence. A recurring message throughout the conference was that we have significant data and research available. What is needed now is continued leadership and action. I also attended another session of the Beyond Band-Aids community conversations. These meetings are facilitated by public health staff, community volunteers, the Lunenburg County Community Health Board, and supported through a Feed Nova Scotia Changemakers grant. The discussions provide residents with an opportunity to explore issues affecting our communities. During this session, I participated in conversations about public transit and what is needed to create a more inclusive and connected community. There were also several opportunities to celebrate the remarkable talent that exists within our regions, and that was displayed through the Lunenburg County Community Orchestra, and there were a number of our residents that play in that, as well as one of our staff members, Jamie Ketty. And the second one was a concert set up by, again, another resident of ours, Pat Watson, and it was a fundraiser for Second Story Women's Center and Be the Peace Institute, which featured a lineup of women musicians and singers. The CAO Evaluation Committee met and continued its work to advance the municipality's Chief Administrative Officer's evaluation process, and I would like to thank Councillor Reinhardt for her leadership of this committee and the thoughtful work being undertaken by its members. As part of Access Awareness Month, Ellen Johnson organized a First Voice panel that highlighted the lived experience of people with disabilities. Panelists shared personal stories, challenges, and successes, while also discussing the importance of advocacy and accessibility. It was very informative, and I found it to be a very impactful discussion. I would encourage anyone who was unable to attend to watch the recording available on our municipality's YouTube channel until June 30th. And finally, we had strong representation from Council at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Councillor Bell, Burns, Hubley, and Moore and I attended as delegates. And as I said, my report has been circulated separately for that. And next year, the conference will be in Halifax. It represents about 3,000 people who are delegates, staff, exhibitors, and companions that attend the program. And I saw today in All Nova Scotia, Andy Fillmore says somewhere between $3 and $5 million injection into the local economy. I did have conversations with Chester, town of Lunenburg, and also with Bridgewater to say that we need to put together a package that would attract people to spend their extra time in Nova Scotia here on the South Shore. So it's something we need to communicate to our tourism people, that this is a captive audience that wants to stay. Generally, when people come east, they want to holiday here, and we should make it easy for them to choose the South Shore for their holiday spending. So we'll see what we can do with our tourism folks in our community to encourage them to put that package in place. So with that, that concludes my report. I don't see any further business on the agenda, and so I will say the meeting is adjourned, and thank you.